This podcast is sponsored by AXA Farm Insurance. AXA offers tailored cover to fit your unique needs, whether it's public liability or protection for your family home, outbuildings or farm vehicles. Based in Athlone, the AXA Farm team of agri-specialists and regional managers work together to ensure you receive the seamless support you need. Switching to AXA is easy thanks to an innovative online service that enables you to quickly and easily find the best cover for your needs. For more information, head to AXA.ie. AXA Insurance Stack is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland. Thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoy the show.
Hello and welcome to the Farming Week, the news podcast brought to you by Agriland in association with AXA Insurance. I'm Stella Meehan and I'm joined today by my colleague Kathleen Sullivan to run through the top stories in agriculture over the past week. I guess the biggest news story affecting agriculture this week, Kathleen, has been the announcement by the European Commission that any potential for Ireland to retain its nitrates derogation will be linked to the Habitats Directive. So will you bring our listeners up to speed, Kathleen, about the announcement first?
Yeah, thanks, Stella. So fresh questions have been raised over the future of the derogation after 2025. And this is despite acknowledged improvements in water quality and ongoing efforts to present a valid case to the European Commission. So on Monday, the Department of Agriculture revealed that the European Commission has said Ireland must demonstrate compliance with the EU Habitats Directive when granting farmers a nitrates derogation. This could form part of the conditions Ireland may have to meet to retain the nitrates derogation after 2026, it's understood. So the Habitats Directive, which requires EU member states to adhere to strict conservation measures, is set to play a fundamental part in Ireland's bid to retain this nitrates derogation. The Department of Agriculture has said that a European Court of Justice ruling that the grazing of cattle or the application of fertiliser on land in the vicinity of a Natura 2000 site may be classified as a project under the definition of the Habitats Directive, as such projects require an appropriate assessment to be carried out to determine their impact on the Natura 2000 sites. The granting of a nitrates derogation to farms, if Ireland is granted an extension of the overall derogation, will be subject to such assessments. So basically, the current proposal is to take a catchments approach to the Habitats Directive under the nitrates derogation. This means that appropriate assessments will be carried out by experts in 46 catchment areas prior to a derogation being granted. The Minister for Agriculture, Food and the Marine, Martin Hayden, told Agriland this week that he promises to leave no stone unturned when it comes to securing Ireland's nitrates derogation, which is due to expire at the end of this year. The Minister told Agriland he remains resolute in his determination to deliver on the derogation, which is due to expire at the end of 2025. He said this matter crystallised in June when the Commission wrote to and outlined quite clearly that they needed Ireland to take regard of the Habitats Directive as well as the water quality in any new application. Since then, the Minister and his officials in the Department of Agriculture have developed an outline approach, he said, which has secured government approval. The details were also presented to the Agricultural Water Quality Group meeting recently, while engagement with all key stakeholders is taking place, according to the Minister. He acknowledged that time is extremely tight and what we're taking on is very onerous, he said. He said there is no doubt that part of his ask of the EU Commission would be for additional time and flexibility, which would allow Ireland to operate with a derogation while we carry out this process, he said. He added that what we would be talking about would not be in place at the end of the year and would not be able to be delivered on that quickly. There would be recognition of that this is a very significant change, he said.
Yeah, it's interesting. Onerous as it may be, we may have no choice. And as I said, this is only for the potential to retain the nitrates derogation. It's not a given by any means yet. But the reaction to this news from the European Commission, Kathleen, has been quite divided. So obviously there's one side, which is the farmer representatives, and then agencies on the other side.
Yeah, as you can imagine, there was a huge reaction to the news this week. The proposals would affect a lot of farmers, considering there are 7,000 currently farming under the nitrates derogation, over that figure actually. So the Irish Farmers Association has said the proposals are very concerning and a serious threat. The president of the IFA, Francie Gorman, said it is seeking more clarity on the government's plan around this. So Francie Gorman said this is a jump into the unknown for farmers, co-ops and processors and the whole rural economy. The Irish Creamery Milk Suppliers Association said it believes the future of many family dairy farms and the wider dairy sector is actually at risk due to the new proposals to secure Ireland's nitrates derogation. The president of the ICMSA, Dennis Drennan, said that the new appropriate assessment process could be the straw that breaks the back of Irish dairying. He said that as data on water quality shows signs of improvement, the goalposts are moving, and farmers are now being asked to not only meet water quality regulations, but also the conditions of the Habitats Directive. Meanwhile, MACRA has called for the protection of the family farm model, along with generational renewal in nitrates derogation renegotiations. MACRA is fearing this greater kind of compliance and additionality could potentially drive farm families actually out of business and then impact generational renewal. And President Josephine O'Neill said that if these new proposals come into effect, there could be nothing left for farmers to pass on to the next generation. Dairy Industry Ireland, which represents the dairy processing sector, said that this latest development on the future of the nitrates derogation was actually never previously mentioned in any meetings with European Commission representatives. Its director, Conor Mulvihill, said the regulatory goalposts have been unfairly shifted, despite farmers delivering real, measurable improvements in water quality. Then Antashka this week said it welcomes the EU Commission requirement that more stringent environmental conditions be applied to farmers applying for a nitrates derogation. Antashka said that nitrogen water pollution has been increasing for over a decade, and despite the recent slight decreases, nitrogen pollution continues to be far too high in the south and southeast, the area of Ireland where the majority of derogation farms are located. And interestingly, the Taoiseach said in the Dáil this week that the Commission's request, of course, arises from an ongoing case by Antashka challenging the validity of Ireland's Nitrates Action Programme and derogation, which he said is currently before the courts with a number of questions referred to the European Court of Justice. So this is an evolving topic, but certainly there's a very uncertain future there for the nitrates derogation and those farmers who avail of it.
We'll have to see what happens over the coming months. But next I want to talk about beef price, Kathleen, something which has been pretty stable for quite a while now. And might I even tentatively describe it as good for these past few months? But this week there was some movement in the trade and farmer representatives were sort of putting out a warning call. Would that be fair to say, Kathleen?
Yeah, so Agriland has reported, like you said, that this week's factory quotes see strengthening prices as factories pay above quotes, and many factories have reduced the number of animals in the weekly kill due to continuing limited availability over the past few weeks. And the Irish Farmers Association has been urging farmers to sell hard as supplies are tight and will tighten further. According to the IFA National Livestock Committee Chair Declan Hanrahan, factories are actively looking for cattle and giving more than what they are quoting. He said that factories in Ireland have had to increase their offerings for cattle to get supplies as farmers push back strongly against the lower quotes of recent weeks. Declan said that demand remains strong from Ireland's key markets. So in the UK, supplies are projected to be back 4% on 2024, and already this is impacting on price. So he said that cattle numbers in key export markets are low and prices have turned a corner in these markets, which provides the opportunity for farmers to increase beef prices. According to Declan too, he said the mart trade is also providing a realistic alternative to factories for farmers with cull cows and finished cattle to sell where prices are easily comparable and in some cases above factory prices, he said. We've also had the Irish Creamery Milk Suppliers Association this week saying that despite prices remaining steady as animal numbers fall and factories see cattle, there's a 20 to 30 cent per kilo more freely available to factory quotes. So the ICMSA's Livestock Committee Chair Michael O'Connell said that with the favourable weather, cattle are thriving and farmers are under no pressure to kill. According to O'Connell, in certain beef cattle dense areas of the country like the Midlands, a notable number of cattle are still coming out of sheds. And although we'd expect sort of the numbers of cattle starting to come off grass to increase, he said it is likely to be lower than previous years. And O'Connell also called talk of numbers of cattle coming off grass at present ridiculous, and that any steer, heifer or cow that was in any way forward this spring went into sheds to be finished, or in other cases slaughtered straight out of marts. He stated that large numbers of 2023 and 2024 born calves were exported, saying this added extra pressure to processors on sourcing cattle. And according to O'Connell, demand for Irish cattle is off the charts, he said, and is going to continue, with predictions of the EU herd falling by a further 5 to 7% this year, it's predicted. He added that Irish farmers are very concerned with receiving a fair, competitive price for the cattle that he said they're working hard to produce to environmental and legislative regulations. And he said standards which he said are unheard of in any other country. And he's calling upon processors to, I suppose, recognise this production and quality standard and in turn reward it.
It's interesting. It's definitely a competitive field at the moment. And, for once along the supply chain, maybe farmers have that leverage at the minute to push real hard, if they do have cattle fit for the factory, to push real hard for that 20 or 30 cent extra. But now we'll move on, and weather is something that's always plays a part in farming life in Ireland. And for such a small country, we have such huge differentiations. So some areas of the country at the moment are into their second cut silage, while others are actually still waiting to make a first cut. But tillage and crops have been doing well this year, and Agriland was out and about this week on the farm of Edward Delahunty in County Kilkenny, where he began harvesting for the first time this summer. So Kathleen, let's get the background before we hear from Edward himself, who was in conversation actually with our tillage journalist Richard Halloran.
Yeah, Stella, it's actually really great to see this week that tillage farmer Edward Delahunty has enjoyed an encouraging start to the 2025 cereal harvest. So this week he said he's caught a crop of integral winter barley, which is yielding just over 4.2 tonnes per acre at 15% dry matter. Edward grows a mix of winter barley, spring barley and gluten-free oats. Fodder beet and forage maize are also key to the cropping rotation followed on the farm, he said. So Integral is a 6-row variety with barley yellow dwarf virus tolerance. Edward said that the barley was sown out on October 6th into a perfect seedbed and has been a good news story from that point through to final harvest. He said that the crop got the rain when it was needed, with the sunshine and heat available at the right times too. He is also pleased with the high yields of high quality straw currently. Edward said that the fact that disease levels in crops have been so low this year has been adding to its quality as well. So he said that too often in the past too, growers have kind of found themselves fighting like a combination of bad weather, poor ground conditions. So it's really rewarding when kind of every now and then everything actually does go to plan, which can be rare. So Edward also spoke to Agriland, I suppose, about how traditionally cereal growers have been price takers. However, the opportunity to produce value-added crops such as gluten-free oats and malting barley delivers an opportunity of premium markets for tillage farmers. And although the initial results from the 2025 harvest have been positive for Edward, he's sounded a warning about the outlook for tillage farmers this year. So let's go to Richard now, who was speaking with Edward all about his strong start to the 2025 harvest.
We can't control the price, as you know. The price, we're price takers. You know, it is in a global market. We can look for people to blame. We can blame organisations or government, or we can blame the millers. But look, we have to take the price on the day, and hopefully, you know, the merchants and everybody will do their best for the growers. And they want us in business because they're not in business unless we're in business. But it's difficult at the moment. And, you know, if the growers get bad weather, that all adds to pressure on the bottom line. If we were down here today and we had to send men home and you had to come down here and start turning straw, every time you drop a rake or every time you have to do something, it's all ended this 5 or 10 margin, which is just not in it. It's just eating out your any margin that can even be made.
Edward Delahunty there speaking to our tillage journalist Richard Halloran on his farm in County Kilkenny, where he began his harvest this week. And the video is actually up on the Agriland website or on the app if you want to take a look. A beautiful day weather-wise down in Kilkenny. Fabulous footage of the harvest underway there. Finally, another story of huge interest on the Agriland app and the site this past week has been the latest development in what's known as the John Deere right to repair case. So, Kathleen, will you remind our listeners about the context of this, as I'm sure it'll have implications not just for John Deere owners, but other owners of all machinery brands, I suppose, at some point in the future?
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting one, Stella. So, a court in Illinois has rejected John Deere's latest attempt to block a right to repair case from going ahead. This is the latest twist to an ongoing battle between John Deere and various organisations striving to maintain or even fully re-establish the right to repair John Deere branded machinery. So the action centred around the Federal Trade Commission's right to repair antitrust lawsuit against John Deere, which was filed in January 2025. And it opened with the following statement. For decades, defendant Deere and Company, a manufacturer of large agricultural equipment including tractors and combines, has throttled the ability of farmers and independent repair providers to repair Deere equipment, leaving farmers wholly reliant upon Deere's network of authorised dealers for key repairs, the statement reads. The lawsuit goes on to allege that John Deere violates antitrust laws in not giving farmers and independent mechanics the necessary tools to repair the brand's tractors and combines. This is a reference to the diagnostic software that John Deere provides to its own authorised dealers. So the Federal Trade Commission asked the US District Court for the District of Northern Illinois to issue a permanent injunction against Deere, which the presiding judge, Ian D. Johnson, upheld despite Deere attempting to block the proceedings. So Deere had put forward several objections, most of them being technical or legal technicalities, but it also offered a new argument. So the company argued that the plaintiffs failed to plead a cognizable aftermarket and that farmers had full knowledge of Deere's decades-long repair practices when they bought equipment. That is to say, the Federal Trade Commission had not defined exactly who had suffered as a result, and even if customers had sustained injury, it was a voluntary imposition because they would have been aware of John Deere's policy before buying. This view may be compared to a statement issued by Deere last January in which it stated that the lawsuit ignores the company's long-standing commitment to customer self-repair. So machinery dealers in the US often are very far apart. So that means many farmers kind of have little practical choice other than to purchase John Deere equipment. So this point was emphasised by the judge, who noted that Deere is able to charge super competitive prices because of the lack of any alternatives for farming customers. So the judge further added that through adding technology to its equipment, the company makes farmers reliant on its own software to effect repairs. By licensing that software only to authorised dealers, the judge decided that farmers are obliged to use John Deere workshops rather than closer or cheaper options. So after the hearing, Deere and Company issued a statement that stated the complaint is based on fatally flawed legal theories and it punishes innovation and pro-competitive product design. So Stella, it would certainly appear that the battles over the right to repair are probably far from over.
That's for sure. I mean, that sounds all very technical there. And I certainly don't come from a legal background. So I'd say there's a lot of legal wrangling going back and forth. But essentially what it comes down to is John Deere wants to keep its grip on fixing John Deere products and making you go to the dealer and using their software, which obviously they charge for. And farmers want to be able to go to anyone they want, the mechanic down the road who can fix it for it, naturally enough. So that's essentially what it trickles down to at the root of it. And that's why we'll be covering it on Agriland, certainly over the next number of months, because the impacts of that case, even if it's in the US, will definitely have worldwide implications down the line, one way or another. Now, I actually just have time for one more story before we go, Kathleen. There was a Kerry man, your fellow county farmer, flat out this week. He was shearing sheep for a whopping 50 hours and it was all for charity. We'll hear from James O'Connor in a moment, but Kathleen, what's the background to this?
Yeah, so this was very impressive, Stella. I think everyone would agree. So James, he's a sheep farmer from West Kerry. He undertook the Marathon Sheep Shearing Challenge over the course, like you said, of 50 hours. And it was from last Thursday to Sunday. He sheared more than 2,000 sheep and they were gathered by local farmers. So all the money collected during the 50 hours of the Shear Crack Challenge at Dinglemart, which was around 12,000 that was collected, with donations still being accepted. It's all being donated to the Kerry Hospice Foundation and the Autism Spectrum Disorder Unit at St. Joseph's National School in Castlemaine. As part of the challenge, James sheared sheep in 2-hour runs, separated by 30-minute breaks. The farmer managed to get a few hours sleep each night in a motorhome parked outside the mart. I'm sure that was badly needed. When the 50 hours had come to an end, James, who had actually trained for 12 months with a personal trainer for the event, had sheared 2,021 sheep. He told Agriland that it was hard going and there were highs and lows, and he said it was a happy relief to get there in the end, and he was delighted and a bit emotional too. The farmer was supported during the challenge by his family and friends, and others turned out too to support him, with a large crowd gathering at Dinglemart to watch the last sheep being sheared on Sunday. And James said that everyone really got behind him and pushed him on towards the end. And despite his sore muscles after the challenge, James said he was back shearing sheep as normal this week. So a huge congratulations are in order, and here's James himself, who spoke to Agriland during the challenge.
12 months of training got in with a personal trainer, Matt Luxon is his name, from England. So yeah, he's been a real help, and to be honest, without him we wouldn't be able to get through this. A lot of help, and credit to all of them. This wouldn't be possible without any of them. Like my wife Stacey and my first cousin Alona, the work and the hour they've put into this is just phenomenal. And Jeff and Roy Collier here helping me and watching me as well. So yeah, without them none of this would be possible. There's 115 done in the first 2 hours. It's hard to see me sticking that pace all the time, but we've over 2,000 sheep organised for this, so hopefully we'll get a long way through them anyway.
James O'Connor there from County Kerry, who raised in excess of €12,000 for charity in this past week by shearing sheep for a whopping 50 hours. I wouldn't shear sheep for 5 minutes, now mind 50 hours, Kathleen. So fair play to him. Absolutely mammoth task, and so good-hearted and good-natured, and well done to all the people who supported him in the local area as well in County Kerry over the course of those 4 days. Well, that's all we have time for on this week's episode of The Farming Week. Thank you for listening, and thanks to our sponsors, of course, AXA Insurance, for their support. Please do rate and review the podcast wherever you get your podcasts, and do share it with anyone who you think might like to catch up on all the farming news. Until next time, from myself, Stella Meehan, and Kathleen O'Sullivan, goodbye and take care.
This podcast is sponsored by AXA Farm Insurance. AXA offers tailored cover to fit your unique needs, whether it's public liability or protection for your family home, outbuildings or farm vehicles. Based in Athlone, the AXA Farm team of agri-specialists and regional managers work together to ensure you receive the seamless support you need. Switching to AXA is easy thanks to an innovative online service that enables you to quickly and easily find the best cover for your needs. For more information, head to AXA.ie. AXA Insurance Stack is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.